Hello, hello, hello. We are live. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Not D&D. My name is Jessica, the host, and please leave relevant clapping emojis and say hello and welcome our guest, John Harper. Hi, John. Thanks for coming along.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No worries. So for those of the people here that don't know who you are, could you give us a little intro into who you are and what you do in RPG?
Yeah, I'm a game designer and graphic artist, so I do a lot of game design writing as well as illustration and book layout and cover design, that type of stuff for my own games and for other games. And I've been doing that full time for more than about 7, 8 years now, I think, when I switched over. So yeah,
7 to
I,
8
I guess
years.
I'm I guess I'm a pro.
A professional gamer, as it were,
Officially.
officially. Excellent. Well, we'll get into and talk about kind of that journey and how you got into RPGs. So hello to everybody saying hello as well. So we've got lots of people here in the chat already, which is great. So we're really excited to have your questions. So if you have any questions at any point throughout the show, just jump in and ask. We'll pop them up on the screen. You folks know how it goes now because you've been watching a few times. See some regulars here now. But jumping back into it, so John, RPGs, when did you start playing RPGs? What was your first one? How did you start this whole career that you're in now?
My first one was in 1984. Gamma World was the first RPG I played. I think it was the second edition.
I
One
don't
of my
know that one. What's
it's a post-apocalyptic type game, very zany,
nice?
talking animals and really over-the-top mutated giant creatures and magic and all kinds of stuff.
That sounds very fun.
It's really, they've come out with subsequent editions through the years. It's always been fun to play. But I had heard of D&D. My older cousins had played it and talked about it, and I'd seen their books, and I was really into fantasy novels and drawing dragons and things. So I really wanted to play D&D, but my friend JT had this Gamma World set, and it was just instant love. We played that afternoon, and I went and photocopied a bunch of stuff out of his book and poured over all the pages, and then took them to my other group of friends and said, "Oh, you have to try this hobby thing. It's role playing," and we ended up playing for years and years after that. I
Amazing.
basically never stopped.
So did you become the DM of your new group, or were you a player?
Yeah, I was the perpetual DM, as many designers are, I think, and the evangelist too. That it was still fairly new as a hobby, and we were sort of the second generation, I guess. So not everyone even knew what it was, and
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that I had this very diverse group of friends across kind of different kind of social strata and cliques and stuff at the schools. There was the jock and the nerds and the everybody like that, and I had a friend group that kind of contained a bunch of different types, and it wasn't
Yeah.
automatically like nerdy and weird to play RPGs in our little group, which is strange. But I
Yeah,
think
it's
most people don't
pretty.
have that experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was good to it helped evangelize gaming and make it popular, at least in that little circle, and that spread into other people around in our school and stuff. And one of my civics teacher owned our local comic book and RPG store that was close to the
Oh,
school.
wow.
So he ran Call of Cthulhu for us, and so it was this very normal kind of activity
Yeah.
at the time.
So
Yeah.
you've been spreading word about the hobby for a long time then. So and we're going to get into it in your career because that's what it's a lot about. And also the
Yeah.
topic we're going to have today is about welcoming new people into the hobby. So I think a lot of the people that come along, as this person here said, that Gamma World is so underrated. So we have another fan of that here.
Nice.
I think a lot of people here are obviously fans of tabletop RPGs. That's why they're here. But it's always really good to welcome new people to it because we're always so keen to evangelize and tell people about it. I love your story there about the high school though, because it feels, as if you can't tell, I'm British by my accent. It sounds like the US stereotype there of like, oh, there's the jocks and the nerds and the stuff like that, and everyone's all playing RPGs together. That's really cool to have that because, like you say, I think a lot of people sometimes it's seen as like, oh, this weird kind of niche kind of topic and things like that, and especially way back when. But I think it's getting better now. I think when you see different people playing, I think being a geek is cool, which is nice.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I think it seems better now anyway. being a young person is always hard, just fitting in and everything. But
Yes.
it does seem like that kind of stigma around nerdy stuff is maybe mostly gone, if not all the way gone.
Hopefully we're having a moment in the sun. We were told
Yeah.
we were told we would inherit the earth, so hopefully now it's happening. Okay, so you're playing RPGs when you were really young, and then how did that transition into you working in the games industry? So what was that journey?
I started out as hacking and house ruling design stuff. I immediately started doing that as soon as I started running games.
Oh wow.
It just
Okay.
seemed natural to me. I loved making art and designing books and that sort of stuff, and so I started doing it right away. Just sort of, oh, what if I hack this from Marvel superheroes and Ghostbusters RPG, whatever, and we'll put this stuff together
Mm.
and make our own version of stuff. And the people I played with were very game for that. They didn't really mind that
Yeah.
it was my clunky little homebrew thing. They were just
Yeah.
into playing. So I got into the habit of making games like right immediately when I started, and that lasted up through college, past college, and
Mhm.
into my career. I was a graphic designer for a long time, and
Okay, yeah.
as my day job, and so I that afforded me the luxury of being able to make game stuff on the side just without turning it into a business right away or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um,
I That's how a lot of people start, I think, because
mhm.
taking a leap into it is kind of maybe poorly advised. Is everyone
Yeah,
seems to have like a side hustle and then it kind of grows into this thing. So
it
what was
was
your
tough at the
first
beginning
yeah?
because for I sort of had two phases to that because my
Mhm.
partner and I, John Elliott, back in the day, we got the license for this old game called Talislanta
Mhm.
and started producing it, and formed a little company on the side to publish under in the late '90s, and that was before PDF sales were really a thing, or digital commerce wasn't much of a thing. So we had to do this traditional, like print a bunch of books and take them to conventions in a big stacks and try to sell them to people face to face and
Yeah, yeah.
that kind of thing. And it was as a side job, it quickly became like full time work for both of us.
Yeah,
And
I can imagine.
so we dabbled in that towards the end of the '90s, and both of us decided like we don't want to do this professionally. Let's just keep it a hobby. Uh,
This
so
is terrible. Let's
yeah,
never do this ever again.
so we kind of shut that down. But I kept designing and kept making games, and then it became
Yeah,
much easier. Some pioneers in that space, Jared Sorensen and others,
yeah.
started making their games available through the web, and
Mhm.
PDFs came along, and you could make them look nice, which I cared about a lot.
Well,
So
yeah, yeah.
it just crept back up on me after years of being not like in it as a business.
Mhm.
I had created this catalog of games and had way to distribute them and a way to sort of build a fan base. And it tipped back over again at that point 8 years ago, where I thought, well, wait a
Mhm.
minute, I can go back to this. I can do this full time now. It's viable. It's kind of justifying itself as a new career. So
Okay,
that's
so
how it happened.
is it just that there was just the market online and everything had gained traction just slowly over time? There wasn't like a big aha moment or anything that
There was, I guess, for me, like I had a decent sized audience in the one of the circles of the sort of indie RPG scene,
Mhm,
people that were excited to play when I came out with something new, they wanted to play it.
mhm.
Um, so I thought, okay, that's a place to maybe have a marketplace to sell stuff and maybe treat this like a job. Um, but I didn't expect that that size of that market kind of grew quite a bit. And then I did a Kickstarter for my game Blades in the Dark, and it was a much bigger Kickstarter outcome than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
And that was the moment when I thought, whoa, hang on, there's a lot more people here that are excited about this stuff than I thought there were. So again, it was sort of like not less having a plan to make that transition and more seeing that it was possible, kind of seeing the space there and being sort of pulled in to it. Like you said, it's so tricky to take a leap of faith there and just hope it
yeah,
works out. So sort of the opposite for me. It kind of like
yeah.
got going well, and that made me decide to switch rather than just
I mean,
hoping.
yeah, it seems like the smart way to do it, to be honest. So seeing people there playing and stuff. So lots games conventions is something you're big. You go to conventions and you run a event as well. Is it the Go Play Northwest?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm one of the founders there. I'm no longer part of the team that puts it on. That's done by other hardworking people, but
All right.
yeah, we started that a long time ago. I don't even remember how many we've done now, 12, 13, or something.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah, it started out as a small little convention, and
Hmm.
it's grown into a fairly sized like regional convention.
Yeah.
We
I've
haven't
I've not
had
been.
it
I'm not
recently,
from. Yeah.
but
Well, yeah, I mean, there's been stuff going on,
yeah,
plagues, wars.
yeah.
Let's see what happens next.
It's really
No,
cool though.
yeah.
It's a get play focused convention. We
Oh,
don't really
great.
have
Yeah.
like a dealer hall or that kind of thing. It's all oriented around everyone showing up and pairing off into tables and running games, and it's pretty much session after session after session all weekend long. It's this marathon sprint of gaming that is really exhilarating and fun, but very demanding too.
Yeah, I
But
can
yeah, that's
imagine.
great group of people there that are still
Mm.
doing it, and hopefully in the next year or 2, 3, whenever, um, that'll be back in person again here in Seattle.
Fingers crossed. I love
Yeah.
conventions where you sit down to play. That was where I found all the indie games, and I think that's where a lot of people go because you just need someone else to generally say, "I'm trying this. Come and do this." Otherwise, it's so easy to get stuck in just playing the big popular games. But
Yep.
conventions is where you find, and that's where I first played Lasers and Feelings as well. Actually, which we're going to talk about later, was at
Yeah.
conventions.
Cool.
So yeah, and I absolutely loved it as well. And also other games that we have as well is Lady Blackbird as well.
Mm.
So I haven't played it yet because I have a group that I want to play it with, and there's been a plague. But a group of my friends played it, and they said this is the best role playing experience of my life. That game was. And they're not the only person that thinks this, because Kevin in the comments says, Lady Black's arguably one of the best one shots ever written and a great way to introduce people to the hobby. So, why did you choose to release it kind of for free instead of charging for it?
Mm. Well, thank you, Kevin. That's very kind of you. Um, yeah, it was during that period when I still had my day job and um, was making RPG stuff as a hobbyist. And Lady Blackbird in particular was made um, while I was at my job being paid by them. So
Okay,
um,
so you,
I was on the clock for one thing,
yeah.
but I made it originally for a game that night. I had a friend in the game group that was
Yeah.
bringing some people from his work to
Mhm.
role playing. They hadn't played a role playing game before,
Uh-huh.
and so I asked them kind of what are they into and what kind of fiction and movies and stuff they like, and I didn't have anything on my shelf that was immediately kind of clicking with what they were into, so
Yeah.
I threw that the initial like rough version together for that game night, made some character sheets and stuff, and then we played it, and it clicked really well, and people had fun with it. So I thought, oh, I'll slap some art in this and make it look a little nicer. And I had already kind of done the work. It's just like GM prep for that session,
Yeah.
making pre-gens and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to see like kind of if that format for a product was a viable thing. Is that something people are
Mhm.
interested in? Kind of this sort of packaged one shot with all the characters and the situation and stuff. And um, so I threw it out there to see the response, and it got a great reaction.
Yeah.
People loved to play it, but then it spawned, I don't know, dozens of these like Lady Blackbird hacks with people taking the system and the idea of this sort of contained one shot, and they made
Mhm.
Wild West ones and other sci-fi things and deep sea divers, and there's just tons of different hacks on it. So yeah, it was an experiment that panned out, and I always have this thought in the back of my mind of going back to Lady Blackbird and maybe doing something new with it. But
It's answering Kevin's question right there. He was
uh,
saying, yeah.
yeah, Kevin. I've thought about it. Yeah, and I've got some revisions to the system too that I might want to implement. But in my mind, I always pictured the cool Lady Blackbird sort of box set with the little owl figure of the ship that you could move around a map and have these kind of like nice components for it and stuff. But we'll
Nice. So
see. I don't
proper
know.
production value,
Yeah.
minis going on, like some serious stuff. That
Maybe
sounds
maybe
good.
someday.
Well, I think Kevin will buy it, so you have at least one customer there.
Nice.
um, so yeah, so we talked a little bit about Lady Blackbird, which I had to touch upon. But also I think a lot of people know you really well for Blades in the Dark as well, because that was an Origins Game Award nomination. Popular game that loads of people really love. Tell us about Blades in the Dark a little bit. So if people haven't heard of that game, what's Blades in the Dark?
Blades in the Dark is a adventure game about a crew of scoundrels in a haunted industrial city. You and your fellow crewmates make a crew together. You're smugglers, or you're cult, or you're assassins, or thieves, or whatever you do. And you start out kind of at the bottom of the underworld in this haunted city, and try to work your way up through the criminal underworld and gain turf and allies, and control over different factions. And so it's sort of a sandbox city game, with these punctuated heists, which are called scores in the game. You do a score, then you have downtime, recover, do your next score. Designed around kind of a fast play approach to that kind of fiction. So there's no sitting around planning for hours and arguing about how you're going to get into a place, and should we go here, should we go there, and all that stuff that bogs down heisty type games. Blades was designed specifically to cut that stuff out and get to the action.
That sounds great, because that is like, some friends of mine play Spycraft, and I love the stories and the heists that come out, but they spend hours planning stuff, and I was like, I can't be doing that. I would just get distracted. Like, I want to go in and do something cool. Let's do a thing. Let's not spend hours planning and going through maps. So
yeah, awesome. I also enjoyed Spycraft, and I can enjoy a good planning session too. But for people who don't, I felt like there was room in the market to make something for those people who didn't want to sit around forever and plan. So it was designed specifically for that. And then it grew out of a D&D campaign that I ran at the office. And it culminated in the players. It's a long story. The short version is they sort of destroyed the world, the setting.
Oh my gosh.
That's
like the worst outcome.
They unleashed this terrible cataclysm. And so I asked them, like, do you want to play during the cataclysm now and have this kind of survival horror kind of game? Or do you want to jump ahead 1,000 years and we'll see what the world is like in the future, and you'll play something in that post cataclysmic space. And they said, yeah, let's go 1,000 years in the future. That sounds fun. We can have locomotives and electricity and stuff. That'll be cool. So I wrote up the setting, and we started playing it, and that group mutated into a different group who ended up playing that early playtest version of Blades for like a couple years, and it almost weekly sessions, and we would just play, and I would iterate and come back with the new character sheets next week and play. And by the time after those years of playing, it became clear that it was really clicking, and the combination of the system, which people were enjoying, and the sort of premise and hook of the setting and stuff seemed appealing to people too. So that was the first Kickstarter that I did, and felt like it had traction.
Definitely. And it has specific dice for it as well. Somebody's commenting they got their Blades dice yesterday.
Norse Foundry just came out with these cool Blades. They're not quite within reach here.
Oh no.
they're oh wait, this one is.
Here we go. Yeah,
sure. Do some shilling for Norse Foundry. I don't know if you can see them there, but they're like.
Hold watch the camera. I mean, we all have thousands of dice, but we all buy more. That's the hobby.
They're metal metal cubes, and they have two like orange fiery blades of the logo on the 6 face there. Norse Foundry did a great job with those. They're really cool.
They do look super cool. I am a sucker for buying more dice than I need, because in theory you only need one set of dice, but buy all of the dice.
Someone in chat also made me this bespoke little dice box with the Blades logo on it, so thank you very much for that. The dice are a brand new thing, and it's really been a process since the Kickstarter of just gaining momentum for that game. It started out strong, and the community has grown and grown, and it's just now kind of getting into its like second phase of people learning about it. So that's always fun to have that new crop of people that hear about it. They hear it on a podcast or see it on an actual play show or something.
Just like this, for
just like this, yeah.
We have some more questions about Blades in the Dark. We'll get on to lasers and feelings, but it's a big question. It's covering half our faces on the screen. So Needcat Games was saying that feel that Blades in the Dark draws some inspiration from the 3rd edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and I wonder if that's true in any way. Is there any influence there?
No, I did. I have played a session of 3rd edition. I'm pretty sure. I ran a very long and involved 2nd edition Warhammer series that was a city sandbox game about the characters in the criminal underworld. So that definitely helped me like learn some GM techniques and some stuff for Blades. And I love the Warhammer 2nd edition system anyway. 3rd edition, I think, is the one that had the custom dice and like the I forget how.
I'm depending
like,
on your knowledge now, because I
think
played
that's
my
when they
first
came out with
ever
the
Woof campaign the other week. So
yeah. I think I could be wrong, but I think 3rd edition is similar to the current Star Wars RPG that has the custom dice where you get mixed successes in your pool and stuff. But 2nd edition Warhammer was what we played, which is the percentile dice system with the brutally low character ability scores and stuff that can barely succeed at their tasks, and it's kind of a grind, more of a grindy type game, which we loved it. It's really fun, and it does have, I think, the part of the question had to do with group classes, which 2nd edition I don't believe did.
Yes.
But
yes, yeah. So the progress tracker feels like the group classes thing that they were saying.
Yeah, the progress tracker, I think that is just in 3rd edition. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the second one that we played, but
well, the good thing is
I got those from Vincent Baker and Apocalypse World. The idea of clocks, it's a thing in Blades that people often sort of grab and use in other games. Just a way of tracking progress on a task, or tracking the alert level of guards, rather than just saying, oh, you failed your stealth check. They catch you, you say, you failed your stealth check. Now they're slightly, that someone says, oh, did you hear something? And you tick progress on the alert, and eventually the guards will find you. So you have this sort of ratcheting tension. And those are I saw them first in Apocalypse World, but they've been in Fate and then a bunch of other games before, Warhammer 3rd edition apparently too. But yeah, I try to play. For a while I was trying to kind of play everything. I keep this database of games that I play, at least one session, to kind of get those things in my head and feel out mechanics and have a broader kind of experience as a designer. I think that's really good to play as much as you possibly can.
Definitely. I think knowing what's out there helps inform your games and know what's going on. And also playing games is fun as well.
Yeah, there's that
too. So we have a question as well about the playtesting. Was the faction game really important in those initial playthroughs, or was it something that was added later?
Yeah, it definitely was important. The factions, all the factions in the Blades book, minus the ones that we cut for space, came out of that game, that long-running playtest group game, in order to flesh out different aspects of what we were doing. Because usually in play, you might only deal with 3, 4, or 5 factions, something like that. But as we played more and started new crews over again, and they had different interests, we started to flesh out the city more and say, oh, well, we want more interesting space here around the city politics, for instance, or we want more stuff to do with the weird occult stuff. We need to add more factions there. So over time, they got all fleshed out, and they all came straight from play, and they were very important. I think for any kind of sandboxy type game, it's good to have that. I kind of think of it like an elastic sort of web, where anything you do, if you push or pull, you're dragging someone else or pushing someone else in that matrix. So you don't have to necessarily, as a GM, like try to plan a bunch of stuff or adventures or missions or whatever. As soon as the players do something, their ally benefits and that ally's enemy is hurt, and now they're your enemy, and you just get that cascading of consequences, and that can drive session after session after session.
Yeah, it's just a
So
reactive world opposed to a specific railroad then, isn't it really? Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Great. So there you go. I think that thoroughly answers your question, Dino Bob. Thank you very much. I'm going to move us on to a different topic though, just because we have some other games that you've designed as well. And the thing we're here to talk about today is Lasers and Feelings, which I've put on the screen.
There it is, the entire
There
game.
it is in its entirety. And this is why I wanted to have you on to talk about this, because a lot of your games, I think you described them as being kind of, you don't need to do a lot of studying, you can kind of just get straight into it and start role playing, and this 100% feels that, because it's literally one piece of paper. It's it's not intimidating and scary as well, because I think because of your graphic design background, the layout of it looks really great and also really welcoming. Like there's little hearts and spaceships on there. It's not scary. So this for me is when people are thinking about trying RPGs and they're like, I'm thinking about playing D&D, but I don't want to buy all the books and I don't want to have to study. And I'm like, just play Lasers and Feelings. It's one page. And also it's great for somebody that wants to try GMing a game first, I think, as well. But anyway, that's me saying how much I love the game, which is why I got you on here. But yeah, tell us a bit about Lasers and Feelings. So in your words and in your summary, how would you describe that? What would the elevator pitch be?
I'd say it's goofy Star Trek. Is
Nice.
probably the shortest way to put it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're the crew of a ship whose captain is incapacitated, so you're left to sort of fend for yourselves without a clear leader. And the GM rolls some dice on these tables to find out what the problem of the week is, and the crew has to spring into action and save the day or not. Yeah, it's meant as a pretty light, fast, one shot kind of game. It is again something that I designed while I was supposed to be working at my old job.
You need to stop saying this. This is recorded. Like people are going to see. They're going to know. You're going to get an invoice.
It's too late. It's too late. Yeah, my friends, the Double Clicks, they're a band, and they had just released this new album, and they were going to be at PAX that year in Seattle, and I knew they were going to be selling their album there, and they had gotten these custom D6s made just for fun with little dinosaurs on them, having to do with one of their songs on the album. And this was one of the songs. Lasers and Feelings was a track on that album. And I've been listening to it, and I thought, oh, that'd be cute if I could just put something together real quick. And I was before I was going over to the hall at PAX. So that day at the office, I put this together, and just to give the Double Clicks, like, to have at their booth, so they could, sell their dice and be like, hey, do you want a game with your give away a game with the dice at the booth. So yeah, I just threw it together. My buddy Ryan helped me fill out the creating a space adventure table with a couple of interesting phrases, and we printed a stack of them on the office printer, and took them over to PAX, and that's how it all got started.
Amazing. And that answers Skellington Steph's question there of how you got the name for it in a nutshell, really, there. So it's inspiration by Double Clicks, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it's a really simple game to run, because mechanically you can see the character creation is literally just 4 things. So
yeah, it's very straightforward. I stole a mechanic from a game called Troll Babe, which is a really cool RPG. But one of its central ideas, and a game called 316 also uses a similar system. Your character just has one number for their stat, between 2 and 5 in this case, and you roll over the number to do feelings type actions, and you roll under your number to do lasers type actions. So if you have a high number, you're more logical and technical. If you have a low number, or maybe more passionate and more driven or willful. And that's all you need. You just need your number for your character and then a couple of words to describe their kind of training or background and where they come from. And um, then everything else is sort of done in the moment.
Yeah.
So you don't need to learn a bunch of rules ahead of time. And it helps, I think, especially with new players, helps keep their focus on the fiction that's happening. They don't have to keep looking at their sheet and wondering like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
What am I allowed to do? You know,
Yes.
it's more like open-ended, and it encourages a kind of loose feel for everything. There's no setting exactly. There's no set story. You're free to just let it develop and be whatever it needs to be. And so I think that also has helped with appealing to new gamers a little bit too, is that sense that you're not doing it wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a big fear as well that people have, and the intimidation of not knowing the rules and things like this, but knowing it's just all here. And you could really study the whole thing if you wanted, but it's not going to take you very long. You're going to know all of the rules.
Mhm.
And also for the adventure, you've got the table that you mentioned earlier before, which has loads of fun things like Zorgon the Conqueror on there as well.
Yeah.
And cyber zombies. Where did you... So you just sat and brainstormed these one afternoon in the office for what the threat was going to be, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We just
and
kind of
Zorgon the Conqueror
yep.
happened.
It did. It did.
Amazing. So yeah, well, Zorgon the Conqueror, that's great. Okay, yeah. I'm just trying to think of the inspiration for that. It's exactly what you said. It's like a zany Star Trek sort of thing.
Yeah, Futurama, I guess you could say too. It's definitely in
Oh
that
yeah, that's true.
style.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of Lasers and Feelings games tend to be comedic in some way. I have
Yes.
seen a few online played very seriously, which was
Really?
also yes, kind of strange but fun in its own way. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a...
Rick Budd is a GM who runs
Mhm,
Tempting Fate. It's an actual play show
mhm.
on Twitch, and for a long time they were playing nothing but Lasers and Feelings hacks and their own that they made for playing all kinds of different settings and situations, and um, that inspired other people to make them. And so they started this database. There's like 150 of them or something now, superheroes
Oh
and pulp
wow.
adventure and Fast and Furious and um, in any genre type thing you want, and if you like Lasers and Feelings mechanics, you can find a hack of it for that thing. And
Yeah,
people have
wow.
kept up the tradition. They've kept them single page for the most part, or little pamphlet games. And I just revised the licensing. I put
Mhm.
an old Creative Commons license on it without thinking about it years ago, but it meant that people couldn't sell their hacks. So I just revised it in the last couple of years so that it's still free for everyone. But if you make a Lasers and Feelings hack, you can sell it. You're not
Oh, great.
doesn't also have to be free.
Okay, and you can pick up the original. I just put the link in the stream here. So it's johnharper.itch.io/lasers and dash feelings there. Is it itch.io? Am I saying that right? I'm always worried
Yep.
it was... Yeah,
Yep.
I'm always worried I'd say that wrong.
I've heard people
Yeah.
say itch.io. I don't.
Yeah, that's what I heard, and I was like, "Is
Yeah.
that what the correct cool kids do?" I don't
I don't
know,
know.
gosh.
I don't know.
Okay, well, as long as we consistently say it the same and are confident, it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so talking, I mean, maybe just in general for this question, but also specifically about lasers and feelings, like where do you find inspiration when you're designing, like for the settings, graphic mechanics, and yeah, so what's your inspiration sources for those?
I'm definitely hi, Allison. Uh, uh,
Oh, do you know
uh,
Alison?
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, I'm a big consumer of media. I try to, always have stuff going, books, and I watch a lot of television shows and films, and try to stay current on sort of book design, cover design, movie poster design, and then of course in the industry too, role play graphics and presentations
Mhm.
that aren't books. And yeah, I try to just stay immersed in as much diverse media as I can. And then when I'm working on a particular project, I kind of switch gears usually and try to um, really focus on a particular thing. If I'm working on this thing now that
Yeah.
kind of wants to be a 60s pop inspired spy genre kind of thing. So
Really?
I've got all my tabs open, and now I'm just pretty much focusing on looking at old James Bond covers and magazines and that kind of stuff, just to get it all into my head. So I feel like I have a toolbox um, to start using.
For references.
Because I think for me, for role playing, for me in general, with role
Hmm.
playing and with design, if I feel like it's much more a work of remixing and repurposing. There are
Okay.
some cases where you're going to find this unique mechanic,
Hmm.
but generally speaking, every time I've thought that, I've been able to find it somewhere else, and there's just so much cross pollination, and I think that's a really good thing. I think it's good in, it happens in fine arts and in pop
Yeah.
culture arts, uh,
Yeah,
but
definitely. I think, well, they say there's no such thing as an original idea anymore. So,
yeah, I think sometimes new creators will stress about that too much and feel like, oh, everything's been done, or oh, I have to be so unique. And um, I think you can find your voice just like everyone has before you. Everyone has been influenced by other people all throughout history. So finding the ways to take those ideas, mix them together in a new
mhm.
way that's yours, and having just a point of view, I think, is often a really powerful thing too. um,
Yeah,
Having an insight into something that maybe is your insight, is very hugely valuable, because
yeah,
it'll connect with someone who felt maybe like they didn't have a hook into the hobby, and you
yeah,
you show them this angle of it, and they go, oh, yeah,
yeah.
okay, now I feel welcome there, or now I feel confident to play it myself, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think that speaks to diversity in the industry and why that growing is a better thing because it gives
Yeah.
us different angles and voices, and you can have the same story but told from someone else's perspective is totally different. So it sounds like in the comments there's other people agreeing with you, saying that yeah, they're listening to audiobooks or watching TV shows and they get an idea and they have to put it down and suddenly do things, and people saying with podcasts. So it seems like everyone's kind of relating to what you're saying about that. Someone has a question as well about, do you think that rules like games like Lasers and Feelings enables player creativity more because the rules are kind of out the way, or do you think that it hampers it a little bit because there's not enough world building to inspire the creativity?
Hmm. I think people are there. There's a too broad a spectrum there for, some people yes, some people no. Uh, so for someone who needs a lot of lore and world building to get into a
Hmm.
game, Lasers and Feelings is not a good choice. And
Yeah.
for someone who feels intimidated by a bunch of lore and stuff, then it is a good choice. But I don't think there's such a thing as like a standard unit of human, that you can design for. You're
Right.
always gonna like uh, pick your audience essentially when you do any creative work,
Hmm.
and that audience might change uh, throughout the process of design, or might grow after the fact, or whatever. But um, yeah, I think it's useful to think of the more specific kind of targets,
Yeah.
for what you're trying to do with the project, rather than trying to make something that's going to magically sort of appeal to everyone. Um,
Yeah. Nothing's going to appeal to everyone. So,
yeah, yeah, uh, and
especially if you're selling it on the internet. So,
yeah, especially, and that's cool. Like you were saying, diversity is good,
hmm.
and having a broader spectrum and then more stuff in each part of that spectrum,
Hmm.
so it's broad and deep, is great. And I feel like, compared to when I started gaming, like it's a kind of golden age now. It feels like
Yeah.
any kind of interest that you have in terms of your sort of preferred fictional stuff,
Yeah.
can be served by an RPG, and
100%.
also like give you space to create in that space. I think arguably that's one of the main activities of role play is creating fiction, and
Yeah.
we don't think of ourselves as writers per se, but I think a role play game group is functionally like a TV writer room, um, making
Yeah.
making a show. Like that is what you're doing. You're not
It's
necessarily making it for
yeah.
an audience, but you're creating
It's
fiction together.
definitely, it's collaborative storytelling, so we're
Yeah.
there to tell a cool story, which is why you can't really win or lose a role-playing game, I think, because it's as long as the story is cool and everyone's having fun, that's the point.
Yeah, I think getting everyone on the same page, like this question is asking, kind of is part of that,
Yeah.
by showing this one sheet with basically nothing on it, if half of the people at the table kind of go, is that it? I don't know. This doesn't seem like enough. Then you
Yeah.
know right away, like, well, this maybe is not the right choice for us. Or you plonk down the 500-page book, and the other half of the group goes, that looks intimidating.
Yeah.
That
I'm
stuff's
definitely
great.
in the
It's great
second
to
group.
find those a way to kind of get on the same page and have a baseline for a discussion.
Definitely.
The next thing, we always would joke about this, how some game groups there, it can be so contentious among the group,
Oh,
like
really?
picking a game to play, or their tastes in games, and they kind of then expect that the gameplay itself won't be contentious, that that once they figure that out, everything will be fine. And I always thought, if you're having so much trouble just picking a game together, maybe
Yeah.
collaborative stuff is not right for this mix of people. Maybe you should have a different group to play with.
I mean, yeah, that's true, because at the end of the day, like you say, it's all social collaborative storytelling, and so if you're not gelling socially as a group, yeah, maybe not. Which doesn't
It
mean
can,
there's anything, like you're saying, there's nothing wrong with it, and it doesn't mean
no,
that you're role playing. It's just a completely different style.
it's kind of
Um,
like making a band or something. You there's
that's
the
a cool
question
way
of,
to look at it. Yeah.
I like that analogy, because I think,
Yeah.
if people who played in bands will know that, like, often it doesn't work out, and you play together for a while, and maybe you don't gel, and maybe you want different things out of it, and so you find a new drummer or whatever, and you try again. And yeah, I think that's totally fine. It's I don't think there needs to be any expectation of
Yeah.
ongoing forever play with this same people forever and ever, or sticking to one thing all for
Oh, really?
throughout your whole gaming
I
life.
expect that from my gaming group. We've been running for 4 years now, and I
Oh,
think
nice.
some of them are in the comments. So yes, I do expect that to go on forever if you're not. So don't listen to John. Yeah, okay, cool. Hopefully we answered that question. So you were talking earlier that there's loads of different hacks of lasers and feelings. Do you have a favorite one?
Oh, a favorite hack. Well, I guess, yeah, well, it's hard to say.
Do you want to pick a few instead of just one? Will that make
There's
you feel it'll
Yeah,
be easier? I'm asking you to pick your favorite child live on air. Go.
yeah, yeah. I feel like now I almost want to go through and catch up, because I feel like I haven't even seen the most recent,
Okay.
30 or whatever.
The most recent
But
30. Wow.
they just keep popping up. But
Okay.
the one that made me really happy was, I think it was fairly early in the days of the
Mhm.
Tempting Fate show. Rick and the group did a Fast and Furious hack, which I'm a huge fan of that franchise. It's
Okay.
it's it's ridiculous, over the top fun, and it suits the lasers and feelings idea really well. And
Yes.
they hacked the mechanics a little bit, so there was this kind of like idea of family that was really important, and um, helping each other became more of a focused, spotlighted mechanic. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was I don't know if it's my favorite, but it was a delight, since I'm such a big
It
fan of that.
spoke to you for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. Yep.
Well, there we go. Fast and Furious, so
Plus, if
cars.
the name fits the format, lasers and feelings, Fast and Furious, it just goes
That
together.
does. That does very well. So we're going back to Lady Blackbird actually now, which I'll jump back to. We can switch between games, it's fine. So they were talking about they've been running games to their group for the last 10 years, and Lady Blackbird's the one they've always talk about with really good memories, like a lot of people do. Love the setting. Do you ever think about building more around the keys and tags system?
Yeah, it is something that I think I probably will go back to.
Hmm.
My friend Clinton wrote a game called The Shadow of Yesterday, which introduced getting XP in the way that, and the name keys for XP,
Hmm.
uh, and the idea that you have a sort of trigger, a particular trigger that gives you XP. You don't just sort of get XP at the end of the session, or when you
Okay.
complete.
A milestone or something, yeah.
Yeah, in Shadow of Yesterday and Lady Blackbird, each character has their own unique set of keys, that they get XP for. So someone might get XP for being a very daring adventurer, jumping into danger without thinking twice, and someone else might get XP for having this unrequited love that they don't want anyone to find out about. And they can all be different. But then you have this buy off ability where you can say, okay, I'm not going to have this key anymore. I'm going to expose my love. I'm going to tell them I love them. The unrequited love key is gone. You get a big bunch of XP, and then you change that key to something new. So it's a way of kind of signaling to the player, since they're pre-gen characters, especially when you pick that character up, you can kind of look at their keys and kind of get what their deal is, and sort of the direction they're pointed. It lets the maker kind of create interesting dynamics across the characters, because you can point their keys at each other. So the players are naturally going to be in conflict here or in an agreement here. And then because of the buy-offs, players, I found like they really love, some players love to look at their keys and go, okay, I need to do all these things. And some players look at them and go, burn it all down. I'm not going to be like that.
Doing none of this.
It's empowering to be like, no, I won't do what you tell me to do.
What a rebel.
Yeah. So that's another fun aspect. And yeah, Blades in the Dark kind of has a key like XP mechanic in it as well. The different character types get XP depending. One character might get XP because they're a big, tough, intimidating person that throws their weight around, and someone else might get XP for being sneaky and underhanded and stuff like that. So it's a version of the keys are in Blades. And then the tag system is another one that I think it helps new role players to some degree. Your character sheet is mostly words. It's almost entirely words. So you don't have 5 in stealth and a 3 in fighting or whatever. Instead, you have all these particular words. You might have sorcerer as one of your tags, and then underneath that you might have air magic and mastery and apprentice, because you were an apprentice, now you're a master of air sorcery. So those 4 things mean you roll 4 dice when you do your air magic. But you might also grab stuff from your sheet. You might have different tags in different places, and over time you can hook new tags onto what you already have and expand your repertoire and expand your dice. And it's a way of kind of keeping it in this story fiction space instead of the kind of accountancy.
Yes, not too
number tracking.
Yeah. So
which again, it can be intimidating for some people. It can be very appealing for some people to see a grid of squares and know I have a 5-foot step, and that's a fine way to approach things too. But we already have a lot of those games, so Lady Blackbird went for the other way, for the English majors. I guess it's just all words and poetry.
No, I mean, I like that. Well, I'm terrible at maths, so on a character sheet, when I have to add up and add this and that, that's the bit I hate the most. So having something that's related to words and stuff, and also I feel like it's something it's as much as you can get away with and convince the GM that fits.
Yeah, that's another.
Some of the words.
There is some of that. It's definitely something I'm passionate about, is getting rid of GMs as babysitters and nannies that are trying to like take care of a group and make sure, oh no, you're not allowed to do that, you're only allowed to do this. And I'm trying to destroy that in the hobby as much as I can. Instead say, hey, we're in this together. This is a collaboration. We have different responsibilities. As the GM, I have certain responsibilities, and as a player, you have certain responsibilities. But I'm not the boss of the group. I don't get final say. I'm not making sure you behave. I don't want any of those kind of behaviors when I play. So I try to bake that kind of stuff into my games and say, hey, players, use whatever tags you want. And like, someone might say, well, that's if they can abuse that. What if they say I use all of them? Like, well, that's just how it is. Like you're not there to tell them no, and they're not there to run roughshod over the game, right? We're doing this together. Picking my tags in Lady Blackbird is a way for me to contribute to the fiction by saying these words about my character, that they're impatient and that they're rash and they're reckless. And I have all these words that say the same thing, and then I'm showing you like how much
how intense that trait is.
Portraying my character when I do that. And I'm not just there as a player to roll higher, bigger and bigger numbers. That's not why I'm at the table. So
Yeah.
um, I there's things in Blades in the Dark. People always say like, not people, very few people, but some people react to the game and say, well, the players just get to say when they activate their XP triggers, and they just decide that they get XP for something. Yes,
Yes.
they do. And like it feels so unbelievable to some people who encounter the game, because I
Yeah.
think they're used to that mode where the GM is there to
Mhm.
corral everyone, and it's this rambunctious group of goblins that are like, we're gonna set fire to the world, and the GM's job is to go, no, 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 you're not allowed. It's your bedtime.
Well,
And yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
just a
in
different
fairness, there are
philosophy.
some groups that are like that, I'd imagine, that do need to be told. But then there's other groups that don't. And I think, yeah, I think in the comments you got Needy Cat Games again saying that reframing the GM as the player is one of their favorite shifts in tabletop RPG design, which is so different from where it started. Because like you were saying, it's very parent-child, kind of what you was talking about before, whereas
Yeah.
before it's way more collaborative.
Yeah, in our new game, Sean Nittner and I, we have a game
Mhm.
called Agon, and
Yeah.
it's about these sort of heroic adventures in the Greek myth style, kind of traveling around different islands and fighting
Mhm.
monsters and stuff. And we wanted to write a chapter for new GMs, and that ultimately turned into calling it a strife, the strife player, the player who's in charge of strife for the heroes. So you have hero players and strife players, rather than calling it a GM, which
Mhm.
is a little bit of a gimmick, but at the end of the day, it made that writing process much more clear, because we could just say, when you're a player, any type of player, you do
Mhm.
these things. And when you're a hero player, you have these additional things. And when you're a stripe player, you have these additional things.
Oh, okay.
Um, and it just flattens all of that out. So the book can just talk about
Yeah.
players, and without ever having to say, the players and the GM, or only the GM, or that
Yeah.
kind of language, which can kind of get murky in
Yeah.
its own way, and also create those kind of parent-child things too, which
Yeah. It's
we
a
wanted
small
to.
change in language, but I think small things like that can make a really big difference in the way you say things. So that does make a lot of sense. We've talked a lot about a lot of your different games, but we have a question of what has been your favorite game to design thus far?
Mm.
Because obviously you probably have many more games and stories within you. But as of
Yeah,
today,
there are a lot.
as of the 28th of March, what's your favorite been to design thus far?
Um, that's tough. That's a tough question. They've all been really a lot of fun. I love the
Hmm.
process of design. Turning them into books and hitting deadlines and doing edits is not as fun, but the design part is really fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, I imagine for you actually, seeing as that's what you do as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I would
Mm,
say the last one was great. Agon, that process was amazing. Working with
mhm,
Sean, we've worked together for a long time. We're dear friends, but um, we ended up collaborating 50-50, co-authoring that
mhm.
book together, and that was just, it was great. It was awesome to work with him, and um, the process of crafting that
Mhm.
game into its final form was also really fun. We played a lot of it, and that was great fun to do, just for fun. Um, but it was also, I felt like my play testing skills had leveled up a bit, because the Blades
Yeah.
process had a really good outcome, but it
Mhm.
took a really long time to
How
refine through
long was
play
that?
testing. It was 2 years in house, and then about 2 years public play
Oh, wow.
testing. Um, which is, that's kind of long, but it
Yeah.
needed it. It needed that much sort of revision and work.
Mhm.
Uh, and the agon process was also very fruitful and got us to where we needed to get, but it was a tighter process, and um, just
How
really,
long was that?
start to finish, that project was 18 months, I think.
Oh, wow, that's a lot less. From 4 years to 18 months is
Yeah,
a big jump.
it was, I think, two-ish years for the, getting it into print and everything.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it had the benefit of being a second edition of an older game of mine from the
Okay.
early 2000s.
Yeah.
But we ended up throwing all of that out. We didn't use a single word
All
from
on the cutting room floor,
it
just throw the whole
all.
thing out.
Yeah, so it ended up being a new game, but
It sounds
Yeah,
like it's the better for it, and you're very happy with it,
it was
though.
great fun to make, and making the art too. I really enjoyed making the art for that
Yeah.
game. It was my favorite art process so far for sure.
Amazing. Well, we're coming up to the topic of the week, with only like 5 minutes left, as I always do every week. Apologies. I said before the started, John. I was like, I always panic. We're gonna run out of things to say, and then it's like 5 minutes till the end. But so the topic this week is welcoming new people to the hobby. So we're all nerds here. I presume everyone in the comments, yes, nerds. And we love tabletop role playing games, and we kind of want to share them with other people. So I didn't know, John, if you had any kind of things you do or suggestions, hints, and tips to kind of welcome new people to the hobby.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit. I think
Mhm.
if you have the opportunity to know the person ahead of time, it's not a convention pickup game or something.
Sure.
Maybe they're a friend or whatever. I think it works well to talk to them about it ahead of time, gauge their interest, and maybe find out what they're into, what types of shows they like to watch or books they read or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I because it for a new player often the game system is it might be an impediment, but if it's
Mhm.
not, it probably will just be sort of invisible to them. And they won't necessarily care
Yeah.
about that very much. Um,
I'm still kind of the same on that, to be honest, even though I've
yeah,
been playing for a decade. I'm like, what's the setting? What's the story? What we're doing? Yeah, we'll do some mechanicals. Sure, sure, but
yeah.
what are we playing?
If the setting and the situation hook them, then that's gonna hook
Yeah,
them.
I agree.
Having a
Okay.
cool combat
Mhm.
mechanic might hook. If someone's
Mhm.
a really like tactical board game type, they might really be
Yeah.
attracted to that. But um, in my experience, when you're starting out, finding out what they love, if they really love Star Wars,
Mhm.
play Star Wars,
Mhm.
and they'll naturally be more into it.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I think having a very light touch in terms of commitment or time or whatever, like
Yeah.
do it once and make it really short, play for like an hour or something. And just let it be what it is. And if they're like, no, let's keep going. Can we play next week? Then you.
They'll feed that.
But
Yeah.
it's terrible, that feeling when someone's so excited about something and they just go
Mm.
on and on about it, and it just becomes this whole thing, and everyone's sort of politely like, okay, yeah, sure, sure. Um, I think it's much better to have that fiery like teaser
Yeah.
kind of thing, and then if they're interested after that, then you can carry on forward. And there are some
Yeah.
games, Lasers and Feelings, and many others, but
Yeah.
that are made to do that, to just have something really light. And
Yeah.
whatever your favorite game is, someone may have made a module or something like that. That's a kind
Yeah.
of um, tasting menu version of the game.
Of the game you
Um,
like.
but yeah, I keep it really short, and try to play to that person's interests. Be my two main pieces of advice.
That's really great advice. Well, for me, I always go for somebody new. I recommend a rules light system as well. And the great thing about your games as well is it's on the site, which I'll put up again. Is it's you've chosen to do it as like a pay what you feel type situation.
Yeah, for Lasers and Feelings, and a couple others,
Hmm.
they're essentially free games, and they'll just stay that way. I think it's appropriate for some of them to be like that.
Yeah.
And there's just kind of a generally open community copy policy with me too.
Okay.
I add community copies for all my games regularly. They tend to kind of zip away, but if anyone wants one, feel free to DM me or whatever, and I'm happy to provide those for people,
Excellent.
especially if you're just starting out in the hobby.
Awesome. So you can reach John on Twitter at John_Harper, which is a very straightforward username, which is very nice. johnharper.itch.io for all the other games as well. So if you want to get in touch for that, that would be great. We have another question here, which is a question I do ask every week, but somebody in the comments beat me to it, which is, what games are you playing, John, lately that you didn't create yourself?
Hi, Craig. Um,
Oh, you know. Okay.
uh, so yeah, I have been into. There's a few games I want to mention that I haven't been playing lately, but I'm very excited about,
Yeah,
and
sure.
some I have been playing. Um, there's a group called Story Brewers, Haley and V in Australia, who are making really interesting, cool games right now. They Fight with Spirit, I think the Kickstarter ended a little while ago. It's a school sports game where you like might be the volleyball team or whatever, and you do have matches and you have personal dramas between matches, and high school drama game. It looks really cool, and they're making these little box games. These are little RPGs in a box with cards.
Oh, that's cool.
Each with its own little setting, supernatural stuff or slice of life. They've got a few more coming out recently. Alice is Missing, which you may have heard of.
Yes, I have heard of Alice is Missing. Yes.
Incredible game. Spencer Stark played with text messages on your phone. Really, really interesting stuff.
Great for the pandemic. That really,
Yeah.
that was its time to shine, really, because it was designed for that sort of separateness that that time had.
Yeah, very smart in that regard. And then what was I thinking of? Apocalypse Keys, which is Evil Hats publishing it. Be coming out maybe this year. I can't remember what their schedule is. Don't hold me to that, but
at some point coming out, yeah.
yeah. It's Ray's game about it's like Hellboy, you like playing the members of the BPRD, like monsters who fight monsters.
I can see Hellboy behind you in the background there, so that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
I can see it just behind your shirt, so I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. This is why I'm vibing with that. That's
it's awesome. Super cool, and Ray's an awesome designer, so I'm really looking forward to that. But something I've gotten into during quarantine in particular is solo RPGs, which I hadn't really been into at all.
Oh, really? I haven't got into them at all either.
I am just so impressed. There's so many cool ones. Allison, who was in our chat a little while ago, she has one called Gentleman Bandit, where you play a sort of highwayman, scoundrel ne'er-do-well, and by playing the game and doing your dark business, you write a ballad, like an actual poem. Through the process of playing your solo game, you end up with this 13-line poem. So it's like doing double duty. If you're never played a role-playing game before and you're intimidated, it's easy to play. And if you're not a poet and feel like you can't write poetry, you can do it, and you
no one has to know.
End up with a poem. Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to show it to anyone if you don't want to. But
oh, that's really cool.
That one's really cool. Dead Belt by Navi and Sean Drake is a kind of Firefly-ish setting where you're this kind of space cowboy scavenging old wrecks, and they're coming out with a 2-player version, a co-op version soon, I think, but it's a solo game. Yeah, there's so many out on especially on itch right now, and I just never thought I just wasn't really interested. It was always a social thing for me.
Same, yeah.
That collaborative thing, and there's so much to do in the solo space that it feels it's different. It's not, obviously you're not having that conversation with the other players and building stuff together, but the way that the systems of role play can be used in a solo fashion. It's always, whenever I finish playing one, and they're usually really short, like a few hours at the most, I just feel so much inspiration when I'm done with it. It like really charges my creative batteries, and I can see it being a good tool for all types of role players. I tend to think of GMs, and as a GM, it's whenever I do one of these, I'm like, now I want to run a game about highway robbers who write poems, and like now I want to run a game of the space cowboy, salvagers, and
that's awesome.
Yeah,
so interesting hearing you say, because it's not something I've ever really thought to do. And we've got people saying as well, like Dead Belt is a good solo RPG. I think you kind of sold it to me there. I'm kind of like, maybe I need to try this.
I would check it out. Yeah, I think that's a perfect one to start with. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got some great recommendations there. So thanks, John, for sharing all those games with us. We are past the top of the hour, gasp, over the hour long. So I'm going to wrap us up here. So if you have any last burning questions you can get answered, now is the time whilst I do my spiel at the end. So thanks very much, everyone, coming to the live stream. Thank you, John, for coming up and giving up your time to talk about games with us. If you enjoy the show but you can't catch it, no worries. It's now a podcast. So notdnd.podbean.com. All the previous episodes are there as well, and you can catch it again. So if you want to listen to it again because you had so much fun, you can. We also have our other shows as well. This Week in Tabletop RPG that comes out on Friday is also now a podcast as well. So if you want to get the tabletop RPG news in 3 minutes, you can watch it by video or by podcast. Got some burning questions just appearing. No questions, just people saying thank you very much for the stream. They enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one. So thanks very much, John. People seem to enjoy it. Yes, if you want to. Oh, good. That's always good. Eases my anxiety. But if you enjoyed the show and you do want to come back next week, we are talking to Andrew Peregrine about Dune, which I can never pronounce. Is like Dune. With the spice. I always feel whenever I say it, everyone goes, "What?" So I'm convinced I'm saying it wrong. But Dune. You can say it, John, so everyone knows.
Yeah. Dune. I'll say it in my
is that how we say
flat American accent.
I don't know. This is like, but every time, whenever I say it, they're like, "What?" But anyway, so the Dune RPG, we're talking to Andrew Peregrine about that next week. So pop back and speak to us about it then. But other than that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and thank you very much, John. All right. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.